All right, so for this game, it looks like we have what is essentially just a straight sequencing game. So we've got what we have 6 elements to work with. We're gonna line up our 6 positions, and the elements themselves are F, H, J. And then we've got K, L, and M. And from there, I guess let's take a look at the rules. So the first rule says that K would have to go at some point before F. So I guess we can just say K is before F. Next, we are told that L has to go before K. So we can link that in since we have a K over here, and we can say that the L is going to have to go before the K. Next, we know that M has to go right before J, and we don't have those guys on the board, so we'll just set up a separate block whereby we're going to have M and J consecutively. Next, if we have H in 1, then L would have to go fourth. So that's a very specific kind of rule. Okay, so if H is in 1, then L would have to go fourth. Now that's kind of significant because if you trigger that, then if L is in 4, then K and F would have to go into 5 and 6. So that's kind of nice. But of course, that's only if H is first. If H wasn't first, we don't really know what happens. Contrapose, though, we do know that if we don't have L in 4, then we certainly can't have H in 1. Lastly, if F is in 6, then J would go third. So if we have F in 6, then we'll have to have J 3. So of course, if J is not third, then F is not last. Now, if you trigger this one, again, that's really only if you trigger, but if you trigger that F is in 6, then J going third, I suppose that would force M to go second since we have that MJ block. But again, that's kind of a limited value. It doesn't seem like we can do much more with that. All right, so in that case, let's take a look at the question. So the first question here, as usual, we go by the rules when it comes to the exclusion question. So the first rule was that K has to go before F. Looking at the answer choices, let's see if anything violates that. So B definitely does, since we have K last, and that certainly wouldn't work. Otherwise, we have K before F for all of them. Next, we were told L had to go before K. So answer choice A looks okay. C is fine. Actually, they're all good because L is first in all of those. Next, we're supposed to have an MJ block. So A looks okay. C does not. C has MH, so that certainly wouldn't work. D has the MJ block, and so does E. Next, we are told that if we have H going first, then L would have to go fourth. So for answer choice A, we do have H in 1, but L is not fourth, so we can get rid of that. And for the rest, H isn't first, so they don't really apply. And then lastly, if F is 6, then J would have to go third. Now in both of those, F and 6, but in answer choice D, J isn't third, so we can get rid of that. And that leaves us with answer choice E as the best answer here. And as usual, let's just plug that into the board. So essentially we have LMJKHF. Next. So let's first pick out the local. So question number 3 looks like our first local question here. So we have if F is at some point before J. So if we have F before the J, well, first of all, I mean, it wouldn't just be J, it would be this MJ block. So that's kind of nice. And on top of that, I guess we also know that F has to go after both L and K. So that's something. In fact, that's pretty much almost everybody. That's 5 people right there. So really the only one, I guess H is the only one that's not really in our chain here. And the one rule that we have, though, is that, I mean, if H was first, then L would have to go fourth, but that we can't really do that right now, right? Because L has to go before all these people. So we know that H can't really go first. But then really, since everybody else is in this chain, the only person that could go first, that leaves us really with L. So that much we definitely know. Now, beyond that point, it seems like we have a lot of flexibility, though, don't we? Because, yeah, H is not really affected by anything else. So H could really go anywhere it wants to. F6 wouldn't really apply because F is before the MJ block, so that wouldn't really do anything. So really, the rest of these positions could just be H kind of shuffling around all these people. So let's see what we can do with the question. The question itself asks, H cannot go where? And I guess we did just answer that question. H cannot go first. Oh, actually, that's not an answer choice, is it? So apparently, there's another place that H cannot go. Well, I suppose since we said H can really just shuffle between all these people, the only other thing that can get in the way is the MJ block. And as far as the block is concerned, we know that the MJ block right now, the earliest it can go is 4 and 5, because you have to have the K and the F in between. So we could have the MJ block in 4, 5, or we can have it in 5, 6. But you'll notice that no matter what happens, the MJ block is going to overlay against the 5th position. So it looks like H wouldn't possibly be able to go into position 5, and that is an answer. So the best answer to question number 3 is D. Next, question 4 and 5, these are both global. Question number 6 is our next local question. Let's take a look. If H goes fourth, well, if H goes fourth, I guess the question becomes, what does that tell us? What can we do with that information? I mean, obviously L isn't fourth, but all that would really mean is that H isn't first, which we already know because H is, well, fourth, right? So that's not really useful for us right now. F6 still maybe could happen, and then you would have J3 and then M2, and that seems okay. I suppose what we could do at this stage is probably just move the MJ block, because really, where could the MJ block go? I suppose it can go into 5, 6, it could go into 2, 3, and it can go into 1, 2. So that's 3 possibilities, and wherever you put the MJ block, I suppose LKF would then end up going in sequence into the remaining positions. Oh, actually, wait a minute. Wherever you put the MJ block, then you're going to have LKF in the remaining positions, but that means that F would end up last. So either we're going to have the MJ block over here in 5 and 6, or if we don't, then F is going to be the one who is 6, because then F is the only one who can go last. But then if F is 6, then the MJ block actually would have to go into 2 and 3. So 1 and 2 would not really be an option. There's no way to place the MJ into 1, 2, because then that would force LKF with F and 6, and that would break this last rule. So really, we only have 2 plays. Essentially, either we're going to have the MJ block in 5 and 6, or we're going to have F be the other person who could go last. But if that happens, then the MJ block has to go into 2 and 3. So from here, we can play the rest. We know that in the second scenario, obviously, L and K are going to go into 1 and 5. Top scenario, L and K are going to, well, and F are going to go into 1, 2, and 3, respectively. Let's go. The question asks, which of the following now must be true? Answer choice A, L is first. And actually, yeah, you'll notice that in both scenarios, L did end up having to go first. So the best answer to question 6 is A. For the record, just in case you could always double check the other ones, answer choice B, K goes second, and no, that's true in this scenario, but it doesn't have to be true because in this scenario, we could have had M. Answer choice C, J goes third. Again, that could happen, but in the top scenario, it doesn't. Answer choice D, M goes fifth. Same thing, it could happen, but it doesn't have to. Answer choice E, F goes sixth. It could, but doesn't have to. So once again, the best answer is A. Next, looks like we just have global questions. Back to question number 2. What is the minimum number of students who could be before F? So what's the smallest number of people that we could have before F? Well, we know that before F, we definitely have to have at least 2 people. And actually, we've seen that. We've seen a scenario where F went third, and there were only 2 people before him. So the smallest number of people that could be before F would then be 2. The best answer choice to number 2 is C. Next, question number 4. What is the max number of people that could be after, or rather, sorry, before L? So what's the most that we could have before L? Now, to be fair, so far we've only seen L go first, so that's not that helpful, is it? But we do know that after L, we have to have K and F. So we know that the latest that the L can go would be the 4th position, right? So in other words, we know that L could never have more than 3 people. So if we want to test whether for the maximum number of people that could go before L, I guess really one question becomes, could we just put L into 4 and then place everything else in position? You know what? Let's try it. Let's see what happens. If we run LKF into 4, 5, and 6, that's actually pretty good because it falls in line with this restriction. Not that H would have to go first, but it could have gone first. And then from there, well, since F is in 6, that would force J to go third, which is probably okay. We could do an MJ block over here, and then H would go first, which would simply trigger L4, which it already is. So yeah, it looks like we're good. We could have L in the 4th position, and we definitely know that L can't go later. So the maximum number of people that can go before L is 3. Best answer choice to question number 4 is C. Next, question number 5. Which of the following must be false? So we're looking for what cannot possibly happen. All right, let's take a look. Answer choice A, could we have F go immediately before M? Now, historically, it doesn't seem like we've seen that. F has been last and it's been before H or last. But of course, it doesn't mean that it can't happen. Could we have F immediately before M? Would there be anything wrong with that? Actually, we can use this slightly more open scenario, because in this scenario is that H can kind of just shuffle between all these guys, couldn't it? So couldn't you easily stick F, M, J sequentially in that order, and then H can go into one of the remaining spots in between all these guys? And yeah, that seems like it could have happened. If you're uneasy about that, if we haven't confirmed it, you could arguably leave this answer choice open, but that is kind of pretty good justification. We kind of already thought all that through, and H could have just shuffled around. So that certainly seems like A could be true. It doesn't have to be false. B, H goes immediately before L. Now, again, we haven't really seen that happen, right? Because L's almost always been first, and in this one scenario, it's way off the mark. But could we, at least in theory, have H immediately before L? I mean, we haven't seen it, but it doesn't seem like that's a terribly impossible thing, right? You could just have the HL block and then K and F. I mean, that actually maybe might run into trouble if you put F into 6, but again, that's only if you. You know what? Let's leave this open. We haven't really, it seems like there might be something going on here, but you might not want to go out of your way to test it right away. Let's take a quick look at the other answer choices. Answer choice C, could you have J immediately before F? Would there be anything wrong with having a JF block? Now, if you did, if you had a JF block, then arguably it would end up being an MJ. Well, actually, we shouldn't use that. It would be MJF. But yeah, that seems like it might be okay. Now, to be fair, you would have to avoid F in 6 because that would force J into 3, which obviously wouldn't work. But could we have an MJF block elsewhere? And maybe that actually kind of seems very, actually, let's quickly run it up. That doesn't seem too difficult. Like we could do something like, say, MJF into 3, 4, and 5. And then we can put H into 6 just so that we can avoid triggering H1. And then who's left? We just have L and K, and they could just go in sequence, couldn't they? So that seems like an easy one to prove that it could happen. So answer choice C is out. Answer choice D. Could we have K immediately before M? Actually, that same scenario. That's a nice pickup. We can get rid of answer choice D. We know that could happen. Answer choice E. Could we have L immediately before H? Now this one we haven't quite seen yet, but this actually goes back to this guy over here, because arguably, as we said, H could have kind of shuffled between all these guys. So couldn't you have an LH block pretty easily? That certainly seems like you could. So it seems like the only one that's left is answer choice B. Though to be fair, we haven't really proven that answer choice B couldn't work. And at this stage, I mean, we had a couple of answer choices that we had a loose disqualification on. So you know what, let's just prove answer choice B. B says H is immediately before L. Could we make that work? Well, if we have an HL block, obviously that has to go before K, which has to go before F. Now we know that we definitely couldn't run that with H1, because if we did that, H1 would force L to go into 4, so you certainly would not have an HL block. But outside of an HL block, could we place it, outside of HL in 1, could we place it elsewhere? Well, the latest that the HL block could go would be to place it in 3 and 4. But that wouldn't really work, right? Because if we did HL in 3 and 4, then you would end up with K in 5 and F in 6. And then you run into trouble, because then F6 forces J into 3, and that certainly wouldn't work. So I guess the only real remaining possibility is to place the HL block into 2 and 3, respectively. Now, if we did that, we still run into trouble, don't we? Because then if you put H and L into 2 and 3, you'll have to have K and F somewhere on the tail end of this. But then there's no way to really fit an MJ block because they're the only ones we have left, and you would have to separate them between position 1 and then whatever is left over between 4, 5, 6. So it looks like, yeah, there is never an opportunity for H and L to go consecutively in that order. The best answer choice for question number 5 is B. Lastly, question number 7, which of the following cannot go second? Now, we can use our history to start. We definitely have seen both M and K go second, so we can get rid of answer choices C and E. And I guess as a bit of a starting point, we know that F has to go after L and K, so F certainly could not go second. Unfortunately, LSAT's not going to make that easy for us. F is not an available answer choice. So apparently there is somebody else who cannot go second. Now, I suppose the first thing you could start with is just to try to consider what might cause issues or what might be a problem, but it doesn't seem like anything comes to mind. The rest of the elements still seem pretty reasonably able to go. So you know what, let's just go down the line. Answer choice A, could we have H go into the second position? Now, actually, this one's a bit of an easier one because in this scenario, we said, again, H could have shuffled between all these guys, so we could have put H in between L and K. So yeah, that certainly seems like H could have gone second. We can get rid of answer choice A. And then who are we left with? We're just left with B and D. We have J and L. I guess J is a little bit easier to test. Let's quickly run it. Can we have J go second? Well, if we put J into 2, then obviously M goes into 1. And as long as we avoid F6, right, because that would have forced J3, this might be okay. Could we do something like LKF and 3, 4, 5? And yeah, why not? We could run these like so, and then H goes last. And that looks pretty good. So J easily could have gone second, so we can get rid of answer choice B. And answer choice D, it turns out that apparently L cannot go second. Why not? Well, let's play it. If we were to play the L into the second position, what does that tell us? Well, we certainly know that H could not go first, right? Because L obviously isn't fourth. Oh, but wait, who could go first then? And you'll notice that there's not really anyone, because K and F obviously have to go after the L. H, we just said, cannot go first, and the MJ block wouldn't fit, which means that really there's nobody left to go first, and that makes sense then. L cannot go second. Best answer to question 7 is D.